back to the Washington Outsider Report on the Coalition Radio. For those newly joining the program, my name is Irina Zuckerman, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Washington Outsider. With us today is Amos Guiora. He's the author of Armies of Enablers, Survivor Stories of Complicity and Betrayal in Sexual Assaults. Um, he is involved in various initiatives related to the role of bystanders, and we'll get into that momentarily. And of course, he has had extensive experience with dealing with the role of enablers. Who are they? Are they facilitators? Are they accessories to a crime? Something more, something less? We'll be discussing all of that today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much
And
for having me.
so I want to start by asking you what attracted you to this particular topic,
Mm.
and what made you decide to actually write a whole book about it.
So it fell into me, onto me. Um, by way of quick background, I teach law at the University of Utah. I was raised in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I'm the only child of two Holocaust survivors. That's relevant to this. When I was 11 or 12, my late father, who was a professor of psychology, took me canoeing. I don't know why canoeing. Took me canoeing and told me in 1 minute, I'll tell you my Holocaust story. In 1 minute, I'll tell you your mother's Holocaust story. And this is the first and last time we'll ever have this conversation. So I'm an only child, and I grew up knowing nothing, zero, about my parents. When I was training for the Salt Lake Marathon 10, 11 years ago, my running partner, who is Jewish, who's not Jewish, asked me, how did this being the Holocaust, how did this happen? I said, I have no idea. And I was on a Saturday morning, and Saturday afternoon, I decided to become autodidactic about the Holocaust and start reading. And it became very clear to me that there was an issue that, from the perspective of the law, had never been addressed, and that's the role of the bystander, the person who's physically present when harm occurs. So, long story short, I wrote a book called The Crime of Complicity of the Bystander in the Holocaust, which is the first book of its kind to address the legal liability of bystanders in the Holocaust. I finished it. It came out. It's been translated into Dutch and Chinese. I've lectured worldwide on the book. And I thought that I was done with this. And then my publishers, the American Bar Association, invited me to dinner in Chicago, and I don't drink, so I guess they gave me a big piece of cake or something. And they said, well, you're a big sports fan. I am a huge sports fan. And you've heard about the Catholic Church. I said, well, even though I'm Jewish, yes, I have heard about the Catholic Church. And I said, well, there's your next book. And I said, oh, okay. And I agreed. And that book is Armies of Enablers, which you graciously referenced. And that book came out 5 years ago or so. And then last year, I had another book, the same question about enablers. It's a terrible story about a 12-year-old boy who was murdered by his teacher, who was a pedophile. And when you reverse engineer it, which is not what I did, but a private detective did, it turned out that for 30 years, this principal teacher had been abusing boys in two different states. And the teacher, who's in jail now for the rest of his life because of the private detective, because local law enforcement covered it up. Um, when you reverse engineer it, you see that for over the course of the 30 years, uh, parents and kids had complained to school administrators, and they had all, ignored, fobbed them, not listened to them, disregarded, whatever. He was able to continue. And so the perpetrator, the teacher, is of zero interest to me, much like Larry Nasser at Michigan State, the Dr. Strauss at Ohio State, Dr. Anderson at Michigan, the abusive priest in the Catholic Church, Sandusky, the coach at Penn State. They're of zero interest to me. I mean, perpetrators just don't interest me. I know they interest others. They don't interest me in the least. What absolutely obsesses me, I guess it's an obsession by now, is the ecosystem of enabling, because without the ecosystem, none of this would happen. So I leave perpetrators to others. For me, that's the enablers, the person who's in a position of power, status, authority, who knows of the harm to the vulnerable individual and makes the decision. It's a conscious act to ignore harm to vulnerable and to protect the institution directly and the institution indirectly. And that indeed is what I write on.
So let's start with the basics for the sake of the audience. In terms of enablers, What is their legal status in the United States, broadly speaking? I understand it may vary from state to state, and of course the
Uh,
federal system. But what is there any sort of role for that?
at the moment, there's not any jurisdiction either in the United States or internationally that views the enabler as having committed a crime. There is no such um, designation. That's distinct from bystanders. I think by now there are 25-ish states, if I recall correctly, and 25-ish countries that have criminalized a bystander, including here in Utah, based on my book.
Hmm.
Enablers, I've testified in Australia, Holland, different jurisdictions here in the United States, met with a parliamentarian in Israel and the Knesset, but nowhere in the world is the enabler understood to have committed a legal crime, maybe a moral crime, ethical crime, but that doesn't interest me. And so my entire focus, the bystander initiative, the great program we've established here at the law school, with the students who work with me, what we really are focused on is convincing legislators to criminalize the enabler. To date, there is no such legislation anywhere in the world. So I guess we're, fighting the good fight.
So let me understand something psychologically and legally. Why are bystanders who, for all intents and purposes, choose not to get involved at all, are treated differently and with stricter scrutiny than enablers who may have an actual role to play in facilitating the crime?
Excellent question. The bystander's physically present when the harm occurs. There, they are there. The
Hmm.
enabler is not. The enabler knows of or should know of the harm, but because they're not there, um, legislators have a very difficult time um, criminalizing the action of someone not present. It's possible, but it's possible to criminalize. That's my entire effort. But to date, they have not, and the distinction between the bystander and the enabler is critical. One's present and one's not present. That's an important difference. From my perspective, it's not enough um, to convince not to criminalize, but the burden is on me to convince the legislator, and it's a burden I accept.
There are many reasons why someone may choose to be a bystander. In the most obvious being fear of getting of negative repercussions. But are there instances when a bystander who commits some moral crime by omission turns into an enabler who may play a more active role even without
Mm,
being present at the scene. When you have a predator embedding, for instance, into a high prestige ecosystem such as elite sports or elite finance, are there any specific incentive structures that convert bystanders into active enablers? And how do these is there any difference between these elite institutions and publicly funded institutions and private networks?
that's absolutely. So the bystander, you're walking down the street and you see a guy falling. You're a
Hmm.
bystander. You're a university administrator and you know or you should know of harm to someone, but your primary focus incorrectly is protecting the good name of the institution, go team go. That in many ways is far more egregious than the bystander without minimizing the culpability of the bystander. The bystander is responsible, not responsible. He sees a person, one person. The enabler, um, let's think about Larry Nasser at Michigan State who sexually assaulted 500 girls. Uh,
Hmm.
and the enablers knew. Well, the enablers were told, and they ignored. And unfortunately, because there is no law criminalizing enabling, those who enabled Nasser go on about their daily lives. In the same way, I'm pointing to the picture of the boy who was murdered, Jeremy Bell. Those administrators in West Virginia and Pennsylvania who knew um, no harm to them. They were told and they ignored it, and they were able to continue in their professional capacity. You can probably count on one hand, maybe, the number of enablers who have been, uh, perhaps removed from their position or have been you know, they retire or they seek a different position. But that's a golden handshake. That's enabling you to continue with your career elsewhere without without any consequences to your enabling behavior. That for me, again, I'm not a moralist, I'm not an ethicist. I view this exclusively through the lens of the law. And that for me is something that needs to be perceived, understood to be a crime. It's not enough, take a university president who, something happened on their campus, they clearly were involved, and we just let them go off into the sunset. That's not holding anybody accountable.
Mhm.
And that for me is what's so critical.
Are the enablers usually subject to any sort of civil um culpability?
Yeah, sure. So take Michigan State. So the girl, I mean, the victims, they call themselves girls, but they're obviously what they filed a lawsuit for a variety of attorneys. They settled, I think, for $450 million, but the university doesn't pay for it. The insurance companies pay for it. So
Hmm.
mm, so there is no real consequences to the university. There has been talk, nothing has come of it to the best of my knowledge, that the insurance companies would say, wait a minute, why are we paying this? You pay for it. Then the university say, no, 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 no. If we pay for it, then we would have to dip into the endowment. We would harm our educational mission. We would harm future and current students. That doesn't, it's not our educational mission. Um, as a result of which, in all of these lawsuits, which are paid out by the insurance companies, the institution maybe suffers some reputational harm, maybe, um, but nothing financial, and that is a real problem. And so we don't we sue. I mean, not I, but you sue the institution.
Hmm.
Michigan State settled for 450. The University of Michigan settled for around 500, but it didn't cost the University of Michigan a penny. Sure, the university president was removed, replaced. Okay, fine, but that's not real consequences. And so it means that the act of enabling is unpunished and the enabler continues on their merry way.
Now, in theory, all of these incidents should have reputational consequences for the institution, which in turn would essentially remove the incentive structure for continuing enabling bad actors. But we have seen time and again, whether it's covering up for, uh, young students who were engaged in drugging and raping their female counterparts on campus, or more established figures such as coaches and medical doctors and so forth, that the effect is actually the opposite. The parents of the students seem to be so invested in the name of the institution that rather than withdrawing and essentially sending a message, they prefer to turn a blind eye to these
So
incidents.
yeah, I mean the university officials, I don't know if I would say they turn a blind eye. They're making a conscious decision to ignore. That's not quite turning a blind eye.
Mm-hmm.
Co-authoring a new law review article looking at Baylor University, the football program at Baylor. According to many reports, 52 women came forward claiming that football players had raped them. Okay. So we both know if 52 are complaining, it's much more than that, right? We all know. Okay. And the university makes the decision, or somebody makes the decision to protect whatever that word means, the good name of the institution, context of sports, the football team. First of all, it brings in a lot of money, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of reputational validity, importance is attached to big time football programs at Louisiana State University, LSU, where football is defined as a religion. Um, Not my term, their term. And the list of cases against LSU football players is longer than your hair. And so, maybe a coach is fired. Fine, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a player or two or three is suspended, removed from the team. Maybe occasionally there's someone who's pays a price, but the overall, it's the same pattern that repeats itself time after time and time again, uh, meaning that the perpetrator or perpetrators know that they can act with impunity and immunity because what I call it's a term, great term defined by my one of my former research assistants. The ecosystem of enabling is what this is all about, and it perpetuates itself endlessly because it has a vested interest in perpetuating itself endlessly because that's what protects the good name of the institution. Consequences be damned.
Since those cases have broken, have there been any effort to institute proactive steps that would combat this abuse of power and this entire ecosystem? For instance, mandatory ethics training for the university officials or the
Sure.
team officials.
So there, we're all mandatory reporters. Okay. We
Mm-hmm.
all do bystander training. As one of my students told me about the bystander training video, which we all do, um, hurt hurt to me. My dead dog could pass the test, which is true. And they actually find it to be insulting because it's a, check the box, check the box, check the box.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that there are no consequences other than
Mm-hmm.
maybe a president being fired, but that's not consequence. The consequence is and by the way, the financial civil suit, that's not consequence either. The consequence for me is to view these people as having committed a crime. Here in Utah, for instance, um, the bystander it's a Class B misdemeanor, which is $1,500 and or 6 months in jail. I don't know about you, but for me, $1,500 is a lot of money. And it's not the institution who would pay for it. I would pay for it. And 6 months
Mm-hmm.
in jail, 6 months in jail, right? That really is the effort with respect to the enablers to view it as a misdemeanor, Class B misdemeanor. But I understand that the challenge is significant to convince legislators. Here, I spoke this week. I spoke with a legislator from not important what state to begin the process of examining whether in the particular state where the legislator resides is to see if we can begin rolling the ball forward, moving the ball forward with respect to criminalizing the enabler. Not easy. And I emphasize, I'm oftentimes told me, good idea, right idea, up, but it's politically hard. Primarily, I think, because for many of the legislators, it's viewed as a crime of, again, omission, not commission, and something that's an O, not a co, presents legislative challenges. Um, Again, I accept the challenge. This is what I work on. This is why we created this program at the law school. Uh, but it's a fight.
So, in the Nasser case, at what point did the compliance culture become essentially compliance theater? I mean, I'm sure they've had all sorts of checklists, hotlines, training modules, but all of that became essentially, it sounds like it became a substitute for moral
Well,
decision
so
making.
one of the first women to come forward is Tiffany Thomas. Oh, probably 20, 25 years ago. She was a softball player, and she went to the trainer, the woman trainer of the team, not the coach, and
Hmm.
who's a woman also. And Tiffany did to her what Nasser was doing to her. Didn't tell
Hmm.
her, did it to her. And the trainer was, "Oh my God, this is really bad." Well, yeah, you're right. It's awful. And she said, "But you gotta go talk to the head trainer, who was a horrible person." And Tiffany went by herself to the head trainer and told her, and the head trainer, along with the coach, manipulated to have Tiffany removed from the team. Another, again at Michigan State, the captain of the gymnastics team, women's gymnastics team, Lindsay Lemke, when she went to her coach, um, and Lemke had been assaulted by Nasser beginning when she was in high school. And so now she's when she's telling the story, she's at Michigan State. She's the captain of the gymnastics team. Was it make her about 21, 22 years old? And she goes to the coach and says, "Coach Klages, enough. I'm done. Can't do this anymore. And I'm going to the police against
Hmm.
Nasser." And Klages says to Lemke, "Lindsay, if you go to the police, I have to talk to your parents." No, you don't. She's 21 years old. We don't talk to your parents. And
Mm-hmm.
two, she says to her, I want you to think about Larry and his family, how this will impact. Lindsay Lemke doesn't have to think about Larry Nassar's family. And the third thing she told her is that, scholarships are given, scholarships are taken. That's a threat. Um, and Lemke, quits the team, and Klages went to jail. But not because of this. Klages went to jail because she committed perjury. She lied to the FBI. Okay, so you lied to the FBI. Okay, perjury. Uh, but that's not what she didn't go to jail because of what she did to Lemke. She went
Mm-hmm.
under. And it's the same pattern over and over and over again. It's like it's a time-tested manual that all these actors have the same playbook, and that's what's so devastating. That the victim, whether it's Tiffany or Lindsay Lemke or any of the others who I've spent an enormous amount of time with, change the words, change the actor's name. It's the same story.
Did at any point anything stand out as completely different? Did anyone in any of the cases that you reviewed acted as a whistleblower for the institution or challenged this culture?
There are whistleblowers. Um, it's they pay a price.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have interacted directly, indirectly with whistleblowers. They pay a significant price because the institution rallies around itself. And sure, there are whistleblower protection laws and so on, and more power to the whistleblower. I mean, I have enormous respect for that. So, you're standing against the system. It's you against the system. I assume you're going to pay a price for it, but you feel it's the right thing to do. More power to you. Not cost free whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I
So,
want to emphasize that to call out an institutional actor against the institution, with all due respect to whistleblower laws,
mhm.
the consequences can be very severe.
Do you think there's anything more that can be done to protect whistleblowers and to change the incentive system from
Mm.
not talking to talking, besides only punishing the people who didn't come forward? Can there be
Yeah.
something?
So I'm not an expert on whistleblower laws, but one of the whistleblowers who I've interacted with feel that they are largely unprotected. It's a
Mhm,
problem. Um, but at my age, if you're not an expert on something, you leave that expertise to somebody who's far more knowledgeable than me. With respect to the enabler, which is what I work on,
mhm.
it really is, and hence the program we've developed. It really is an all in effort to criminalize them, because otherwise they won't be held accountable. Because again, the money doesn't impact them. You are the university, whatever. The university pays the insurance companies pay it, so there's no consequence. That's the problem here, is there are really no consequences, and you could make the argument that the perpetrator knows there are no consequences, and the enabler knows there are no consequences, and as a result of which the vulnerability of the survivor, the vulnerable individual, is only enhanced.
So would you say it's mostly careerism, groupthink, or sunk cost bias that turns colleagues and supervisors into buffers for the likes of Nasser, for the like of Jeffrey Epstein and other
Yeah,
predators?
it's an excellent point. So when I interviewed the girls from the Olympics who were
Hmm.
abused by NASA, and we talked about the enablers, many of the enablers, by the way, are women.
Hmm.
One of the survivors told me she's an Olympic athlete. A medal winning Olympic athlete who was abused by NASA who knows how many times, right? And here's what you have to say about the women enablers. It's not pleasant, but it is what it is. One, the women enablers are oftentimes jealous of women athletes.
Mm.
Right? Two, she's telling me, the athletes, that a lot of them are the athletes are many of them are not likable people. They are, totally wrapped up and consumed in themselves. Their whole world, everybody's world revolves around them. They
Hmm.
are beyond successful. Their athletic ability is, I mean, For the rest
Mm-hmm.
of us, it's unimaginable. Um, Enablers identify with the institution more than with the individual. Enablers are have a financial interest in the welfare of the institution, and they don't really feel any particular um, attachment, if you will, to the particular athlete. Their attachment is to the institution. But she was
Mm-hmm.
pretty insistent, if I think that's the right word, on emphasizing that they, the Olympic athlete, that peak, that elite level of athlete,
Mm-hmm.
is maybe I don't know my word, not hers. All self-consumed.
Mm-hmm.
Narcissist is the word, but she was very clear about this that that level of athlete. Many of them, she told me, we're just not likable people because we expect that everybody's world revolves around us. And then the enabler is not particularly attracted to us, and the enabler's identity or identification is
Mm-hmm.
related to the institution and not the particular athlete. It's an issue.
So, in terms of legal architecture and working in favor of the enablers, such as non-disclosure agreements, non-prosecution agreements, confidential settlements, arbitration clauses, um, are they? Do you see them as entrenching impunity, or are they a necessary part of?
Yeah, so I was interviewed a number of years ago about NDAs,
Mhm,
non-disclosure agreements, and the question was posed. Yeah, it was in the context of what was his name, the professional baseball player who has lawsuits against him, and also some of these entertainers, right? Is
mhm,
it a form of enabling? It's a really, really interesting question. On the other hand, a lot of the victims, and I understand this, sign the NDA, there's a settlement and assume the idea is to move on with their lives, which I understand that. But I remember the couple of reporters who interacted with me about it. It's an interesting question. I don't think there's a clear-cut answer this way, this way, this way, whether NDAs perpetuate harm because the guy, pays off the money, off he goes, and there's an NDA, and then the public doesn't know about the harm caused by this person, or knows but doesn't know the consequences. On the other hand, settlements are very much at the core of this entire legal system, and if you do away with NDAs, I think the fallout would be enormous. But there's a bind there. And I don't, to your question, I don't think there's an easy answer whatsoever.
mhm. So one of the things that I'm seeing now, in regards to that, with the Epstein victims, is that they are being discredited and publicly smeared because many of them either signed NDAs or got private settlements and therefore have been precluded from testifying. And all of that is being used to basically dismiss the entire issue as extremely limited in scope.
Um, I mean, Jeffrey Epstein, the harm that he caused, enormous. Who enabled Jeffrey Epstein? We could sit here and have a long conversation about that. It's actually my colleague down the hall, Professor Cassell, who represented Jane Doe A, I believe, one of the first cases. The role of what was her name? Maxwell, is that her name? Um,
Mm-hmm,
was she the girlfriend, the Madame, the Procurer, the Enabler? Yes, yes,
mm-hmm,
and yes. Um, all those who were coming to the dinner parties, what are they? All those who were in the island, what are they? This was Epstein had as far as I can tell, a massive system of with him in the middle, and obviously the girls. There are obviously perpetrators, and you can certainly ask yourself, and I've asked this: you came to Epstein's house for dinner, and the people who are serving you um, are all these young girls. You don't ask yourself any question: what are you? Are you a perp? Are you an enabler? Or I don't know. It's a really, really interesting question. And there's no doubt that the Epstein case, and who knows who else was involved in it, raises innumerable questions. I remember when I got interviewed about Maxwell, she's the madame. Is that an enabler or a perpetrator? It raises many, I see now the former Prince Andrew, right? Because they're taking away his title. Um, his brothers had enough of him. Um, what's he? I, I would say he's probably a perp.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, she was 15 or 16, right? That's a perpetrator. But those who knew didn't benefit. They're enablers, and I would certainly like to see them all prosecuted. I can't because it's ex post facto, but moving forward, or Harvey Weinstein,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's the exact same thing. I mean, the numbers are staggering, and the numbers are staggering because of the ecosystem of enabling.
So that leads me to kind of a tricky question because there are all sorts of ways in which people can be enable harm,
Mm.
negligence, willful blindness, and knowing facilitation. At what point would you say that should there be what should trigger criminal liability for the executives, coaches, doctors, trustees, bankers, fixers, and others in that ecosystem?
So I focus primarily on sexual assaults. When I mean, go back to Lemke going to Klages and Klages saying, call the police, call your parents, call that. I mean, that's an enabler. I mean, I would love to have legislation in the state of Michigan where all this unfolded, and to have Kathy Klages not sent to jail because of perjury or sent to perjury, if she committed perjury, and also for telling Lemke,
Mm-hmm.
Lindsay, scholarships given, scholarships taken. I mean, that's a direct threat. I mean, it is beyond outrageous. But Klages made the clear decision to protect the institution directly, Nasser indirectly. Not to view that as a crime is something that um, I find mind-boggling. But again, as I said a few minutes ago, the burden is on me as the one who has become, the ball carrier on this issue, to view them as having committed a crime. But again, not to repeat, but I understand that the challenges from the perspective of the legislatures and the burden that I have imposed on myself to convince them. But it's a fight, which is, that's fine.
So we are seeing a lot of in a lot of these cases that there's, reputational laundering through philanthropy goes on and through elite social access. We've seen that, of course, in the Epstein network, but also in some of these other elite cases. And we are seeing institutions accepting basically tainted money from people with, that kind of record. The Weinstein case is certainly an example of that. Why do they not cut all of this off early enough that the damage could be mitigated clearly? Why do they keep taking the money and keep associating with these people until it becomes so big? Then,
Mm.
of course, they feel pressure to protect the institution.
Are you an American football fan?
Not really. I can't say that I am.
The money is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember a former president of a major American university uh, saying to me once, "Do you know what the worst day of the year is?" I said, "Nope, but you're asking, so I assume you're going to tell me." And he said to me, "The worst day of the year is the morning after we have lost a major football game, because that's the day that all the alumni and donors call me. They're not calling me to talk about the chemistry professor. They couldn't name a chemistry professor. They're calling me to complain, moan, bitch about the football coach. And the stakes are so high, and the stakes have gotten much larger. Uh, if you look, for instance, at buyout contracts of college football coaches,
Mm-hmm.
so what's his name? Franklin at Penn State. His buyout will cost Penn State $50 million. I don't know about you, but $50 million is a lot of money. Um, the NIL money, the name, image, likeness that the players are receiving. So the starting quarterback at University of Michigan, Bryce Underwood, his NIL money, he's a freshman, he's 18. His NIL is around 12 million. That's a lot of money.
Mhm.
And that means that the financial stakes are so big, in part because of TV contracts, that this sounds awful, what I'm going to say. Awful, awful, awful. If you do a cost benefit risk management analysis.
Mhm.
So I'm really sorry that she was harmed, but we need him on the field and we need the donors happy. And, you know, you know, and it's awful. I can't emphasize that sufficiently to you. But it is, I think, a really risk management, cost benefit prioritization, resource allocation discussion these people are having with themselves, um, which is beyond nefarious and injurious from the
Mhm.
perspective of the vulnerable individual. There's also a thing about terminology. So, student is murdered, and the university refers to it as her tragic passing.
Mhm.
She didn't die. She was murdered.
Mhm.
Terminology is important. It also tells you how things are marketed. There's a lot, I don't know if I would say there's a lot of marketing here, but there's a
Mhm.
lot of sensitivity to I would call to the reputational index.
Hmm. So would you say that in that context, some of these donors are also enablers in that they prioritize the players over the, good behavior?
Yeah, I don't, but they're the money guys, but they're not the ones who I would go after. I'd go after the
Mhm.
coach, the trainer, the doctor, the university president, the athletic director. Here, listen, writing another law review article, um, where the athlete was harassed, not abused. There's a fine line there by a coach, by a woman coach. It's a woman athlete, woman coach, and she documented everything. And when she and her parents went to meet with university officials, they had it in a
Mhm.
book. They had everything documented. The university officials said to the parents, "What do you want us to do?" Like, really? That's outrageous.
Mhm.
That's enabling. I mean, you're asking me, the victim, you're asking me, what do I want you to do? I want you to hold the coach liable and pardon my English, but go kick some serious ass. Don't ask me what do I want. Your job as the athletic director, the dean, the whatever the hell it is to tell me, Mr. and Mrs. Parent, this is what we're doing. A, B, C, tuck, tuck, tuck. Don't put it in my court. Exactly classic behavior.
Hmm.
It's a form of gaslighting.
By the way, going back to the Catholic Church scenario, where the situation is a little different, but at the same time similar. We've had these stories of these abusive priests for decades. Now, there, it's not an issue of, donations based on athletic ability and fame. The Catholic Church gets donations regardless. Shouldn't there be an easier, why wasn't it easier to get rid of the abusive priests? You know.
So when I wrote the book Armies of Enablers, and one of the people I interviewed was a Catholic Church survivor. I mean, she was raped by the priest beginning at the age of 7 in the family home. Raped, abused, because he knew the family had challenges, issues, and she was vulnerable, right? And when she came forward a few years later in her 20s, the diocese did exactly what the diocese, I mean, you know exactly what they did is they um, shuffled him along to another diocese. Just, protect the good name of the institution. And all he did was make sure that, I mean, by shuffling him off to a different diocese, um, pretty much ensuring that he'll commit harm elsewhere.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's the same repetitive pattern time after time.
So why didn't they just defrock those priests right away?
Because it does, I think the reason is it's easier pill to swallow reputationally, public facing. Father Schmo, we
Hmm.
moved him on. Because if you, I don't know enough about Catholicism, but I assume if you defrock there's a process and there's a this
Mm-hmm.
and there's that and there's a public listen, I sat in this chair, in this very chair I'm sitting in a few years ago, a woman who's a teacher, um, and she had been assaulted. She was kissed by a colleague,
Mm-hmm.
against her wishes. And when she demanded the principal file a complaint, the principal went into one of those, oh, honey, he's a really good guy. I know him. He means well. Well, no, he didn't. He assaulted her. And the principal didn't file a complaint. When I contacted the relevant official in the school administration, I was told, oh, professor, he's a good guy. No, he's not. He sexually assaulted her. He kissed her. So there, what happened was they just, what's coming, right? They moved him to the next school district or the next school over. It's a pattern that repeats itself endlessly. And when new cases come to me all the time. Here, somebody reached out to me recently. The endless repetitiveness, bad English, I know, but the endless repetitiveness of it just for me just reinforces the need, time after time, of the need to address this. That's what I work on, and that's why, I'm so grateful that the students who've worked with me and to make this project happen, the donors who support us, because it's a fight. It's a critical fight because if we don't address this, men and women alike, or boys and girls alike, will continue to be assaulted regularly.
To what extent do you think society at large, at least in the United States, is aware of the scale of the problem throughout various institutions? Do people realize how many people have been abused to various capacity,
Mm.
in various
Uh,
capacities?
It's an excellent point. I mean, the numbers are staggering. I mean, reports suggest that 1 out of 4 college women are harassed, abused, assaulted. When I teach undergraduates, within 2 seconds, hands go up in the air, and they say to me, "Professor, come on, it's not 1 out of 4, it's 1 out of 1, right?" Um, the numbers are staggering. So is it 1 out of 2, 1 out of 2, whatever it is, but I assume it's more than 1 out of 4. College women are, harassed, abused, assaulted, but also, guys are abused, assaulted, harassed. Um, and yet we just, soldier on, which is terrible.
So there's been, of course, a huge fallout from the Me Too movement, with people also claiming that some people have been falsely accused, or
Sure.
that the extent of the outrage has been exaggerated in some cases against people who were either wholly innocent, or where there was, a revenge sort of after consensual encounters. There's been, they had a falling out, and, the women or the other side claimed,
Sure.
uh, you know. So
So the
how
assump
do you balance these interests and
so first of
assessing
all,
this?
the assumption is that 94% of sexual assault complaints are true. I didn't say accurate. There's a
Mm,
difference. Because oftentimes the victim comes forward and says, tuck, tuck, tuck happened, and it's, tuck, tuck, not tuck, tuck, tuck. To mean it didn't happen, it's just not 100% accurate. But the working assumption is around 94% are true. When I'm asked, worldwide, what should be the correct response? The correct response is to believe the complainant. Don't don't do this hand motion to them. Uh, First of all, it's devastating to not be believed. It's devastating to be shuffled off, right? Because
mhm.
it minimizes you, it humiliates you, and it protects the perpetrator. Again, I say, doesn't mean everything she or he said is 100% accurate. Okay, fine, but it's still correct. And the instinctual response, I know him. He's a great guy. You misunderstood. And that's without getting into the lines I hate. What did you wear? Did you, I mean, because that's victim blaming. The number of times that uh, women survivors have shared with me, that look, right? What were you wearing? It doesn't matter what I was wearing. That's victim blaming, and that's a huge issue.
Mm.
Because it's just
That,
it ensures perpetuation of the crisis. It's not my term. One of the people I interviewed said to me, this is an epidemic. I think that's pretty accurate.
What would you say is the role of the media in all of this? Has the media amplified some of the enablers' narratives? Have there been any, PR strategies, legal threats, selective access that's been used to get media to, cover up some of these situations?
At my age, if you don't know the answer, you don't make it up. So I don't know
Mm-hmm,
about the media. I know about the media, not here in America, but in a different context, because
mm-hmm,
that I live in Israel, and that's a different book project about the role of the media as enabling Netanyahu's behavior. But that's a different conversation,
mm-hmm,
um, different examination. With respect to what you're asking, I don't again, uh,
mm-hmm.
I don't know enough to give you a thoughtful answer, and I respect you too much to give you an answer which is not based on knowledge.
Do you say do uh, um would you say some gatekeeper professions such as law, medicine, accounting, private banking, um, what are their ethical obligations, generally speaking, to the public when there is, the profiles of their client or the risk suggest an ongoing harm?
So, the role of the lawyer is to defend his client. Um, I, the lawyers, the judges, the police, in the context of what you and I are discussing, I, I have not looked at them. Maybe I could, but I have not. I focus like this narrowly, tightly, like a, bowling lane
Mhm,
on the institutional actors, not the externals. In a separate book project again on Netanyahu's enablers, there I look at additional actors, but here in the context of what we're discussing with respect to whether it's the armies of enablers or the book about the boy who was killed, um, that's a very narrow focused view because there are so many actors, and that's what I focus on. I mean,
mhm.
actors within the institution, not external to the institution, but internal to the institution.
So, what generally happens to some of these enablers after the scandal blows over? Do they just keep going?
Answers in the question. Tiffany Thomas was in Lansing, Michigan, a few years ago, administrative hearing about the continued employment of the two trainers, and the court dismissed Tiffany's complaints, and facilitated the two enablers continuing their work. Full stop.
Question.
I can give you examples
Mhm,
of of university presidents or coaches who have been
mhm,
removed, but it's not okay. So they're removed, but it's,
mhm.
I find that to be incredibly unconvincing
Why do you suppose the courts have taken such a sympathetic position in favor of enablers?
because, of course, there are no cases in the courts against enablers because it's not been criminalized. And
Mm-hmm.
with respect to financial settlements, these are all these cases are settled, and the court, you know, Zygazun signs off, and off we pay the $500 million. Move on. The courts don't play a role here at all
Mm.
because there's no prosecutor has come forward. No prosecutor has indicted an enabler. Somewhere I'll find a legislator. This is what I work on along with my students. We'll find a legislator who will work on this, um, and then there'll be a law, and then we can find an enabler, and then somebody can hopefully question them and indict them, and then convict them. But it's a fight, and I emphasize that, which I've taken on myself.
Now, a few years back, there was legislation in U.S. Congress concerning the military sexual assaults case. I'm only broadly familiar with that legislation, but I
Yeah,
suspect that it did not touch on the role of the enablers.
so that's very interesting. I was involved in a project,
Mm-hmm,
um, enablers and sexual assaults in the military. It's a problem.
mm-hmm,
Um, I served in the Israeli military for 20. Um, when you unpack sexual assault in the military, which is what I was working on. Sure, there are enablers. Um, Military is an entity unto itself. I speak as someone who served for 20 years. Um, the Band of Brothers,
Mm-hmm.
uh, in which the good name of the organization, and we're together and we're in harm's way together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the number of survivors who I interacted with, um, the harm caused is obviously significant. What exacerbates it is they thought they too were part of the system. They thought they would be protected, and
Mm.
they wore the uniform. They were part of the team, and in the critical moment, they were not only assaulted but abandoned. I mean, assaulted by the perp, abandoned by
Mm-hmm.
the.
Mm-hmm. By the system.
It's exactly right, and in that sense, it's the expression a double whammy, but call it a double whammy.
Mm-hmm.
So you're 100% right. It's a huge problem. And the military is, again, I speak as someone who served in the military for 20 years. It's an entity unto itself, which I know that for outsiders probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The military culture,
Mm-hmm.
uh, right,
Is it basically a
oh.
groupthink that enables this sort of acceptance?
Mm, I don't know, group thing. Ensuring that we're all on the same page, because we have a common mission, and that common mission can result in really, really nasty things.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. I don't know if I call it groupthink. I think it's more a sense of loyalty to the morale of the unit, the need of the unit, the obligations of the unit, the togetherness of the unit. On paper, it sounds fine. It's like a movie, right? In reality, it's far more nuanced than that.
So, what is it about the legislators that makes them unwilling to um sort of take a stab at this? Is it because their districts benefit from the money?
No, because I think it's very difficult for legislators to legislate something that's perceived as an omission, not a commission.
Hmm.
I think that's I don't know if that's 100% of it, but it's a very significant part of it. Because and add to that, the enabler is not present. He's not, he or she is not there when something happens. And I think that from a legislative perspective, um, that poses a challenge.
Are there cases where you would say there's a thin line between the enabler committing something by omission and actually actively facilitating? Where you would say that the line is thin enough that it could be kind of seen not simply a passive, you know.
I got it. In the cases I've looked at, there's a clear line of demarcation between the perpetrator and the enabler. There may be cases of crossover. I don't have something that instinctively comes to mind. There's this and there's this. I don't know if you can see this on my office, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can see that.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what an ecosystem of enabling looks like.
Hmm.
That's the ecosystem of the enabling of the boy who was killed. But I don't think I know there are those who suggest that some of the enablers are, they cross over two sides of the street. Um, as the lawyer, show me the proof. Ain't got no proof, don't buy it. I think
Yes.
It's like a Chinese wall.
So, in cases of family abuse, domestic violence, whether between spouses or one
Uh,
spouse and children,
yeah,
and
yeah,
one of the parent is not doing anything, how does that fit into this whole structure?
right. So I have made a decision for which I know I've been criticized. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't write about families. I leave that to others.
Mm-hmm.
I've been asked this on a number of occasions, and
Mm-hmm.
as I said to you earlier, at my age, you don't know enough. You don't. I
Mm-hmm.
have nothing to add to that because I've made a decision not to write about families. I just don't. I'm not an expert. Don't know enough. Leave that to others who are far more knowledgeable than me.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that what would you say basically about the direction where this situation is moving? Do you think it's becoming more ripe for abuse, or do you think people are becoming, more thoughtful and less likely to commit these acts to begin with, or has it basically not changed?
I think I think in spite of the enormous media attention, whether it's Weinstein, Epstein, LSU, Baylor, USA Gymnastics, Michigan State. I'm not a sociologist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm the child of a psychologist, but that's not my field. Human nature is human nature. And that
Mm-hmm.
is why, for me, uh, it's essential to have standards of accountability.
Mm-hmm.
After that, not a damn thing will change. And for me, wearing, a law professor, law school, law lawyer hat, accountability is in the criminal process, full stop. And absent that, nothing's going to change. And so all of our efforts, um, here I have a meeting in a minute with two students who are writing an article about a terrible case. Um, if we don't criminalize the enabler, in X years, you'll have the same conversation with someone else and nothing will have changed. That is terrible. And by the way, victims know this. Victims know they're unprotected.
Hmm. So, in terms of proactive policies, can there be a proactive, forward-looking consensus by universities or by other institutions for handling star performers, whether they're celebrity
Y-
physicians, rainmaker donors, championship
You mean other
coaches?
other than other than the other than the performative that we're going to address this and that there's nothing
Mm-hmm.
more. Yeah, no. Until you hold them accountable, not a damn thing.
But what I'm saying is, can someone put forward official policies that will be adopted, not simply as an ad hoc reaction to a case, but as a forward-looking, um, you know, proposal with specific
Absent criminal,
measures?
no, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
Absent criminal prosecution, no,
Hmm.
because there's no accountability. That's where it
So,
begins and ends.
hmm.
It's my bottom line for you.
But
Criminal accountability.
in terms of actually figuring out who is involved in all these structures, what sort of forensic data trails can unmask
Well, that's
these
easy.
enabler networks?
In all these cases, uh, like in this case with the boy who was killed, the private detective who broke the case, Mr. Barber, um,
Mm-hmm.
he reversed engineered it. It took him 3 years. It took him 3 years to reverse engineer it.
Mm-hmm.
50,000 pages of documents. Um, and he was able to reverse engineer it. And you can see exactly how step by step by step by step by step, like a well-oiled machine. A well-oiled machine that the little 12-year-old boy, he stood no chance because the perpetrator, Friedrichs, whose picture's on my wall, um, he knew that he was protected.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's so outrageous. And you can have policies, you can have all the mantras and all the this and this until you have criminal accountability, ain't nothing going to
Mm-hmm.
change. Here, it's just I have students coming in to we're working on this article where website facilitates. I mean, it's over and over.
There, would you say movements like survivor movements or families of the victims who are lining up behind you and behind this initiative to push for this sort of legislation?
Yeah. So when I mean, I spend a lot of my time with survivors, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
um, who will tell me that as bad as the physical attack was, and it was awful, the long-term harm for many of them is the recognition that they were abandoned by the person who was mandated with protecting them. And I think I think that their sense that I am addressing that issue is the reason that they are reaching out to me. Because again, as I said when we first began, the perpetrator doesn't interest me. That'll leave to others. But the fact that someone who's entrusted with my welfare abandoned me because of the name of institutional complicity, go team go, that this is what they tell me is far more harmful.
Is there a way to create a viable lobby that goes beyond, a small group of people that
Mm.
would bring attention to this as a matter of legislative priority?
Sure, I get that. Um, I agree with you that, bottom up, not top down.
Hmm.
But these institutions are powerful. Again, what I told you earlier, the finances of it are, it's an excellent question. The finances of it are such that the institutions have a clear interest in sticking to the performative mantras, those press statements, rather than anything substantive.
But, you made another important point. Some of these star athletes are stars. They're the ones who are bringing in the money to these institutions. Do they not have that power to kind of push back?
The fortune of the football. You told me you're not a sports fan, right? The fortune the fortune of the team on Saturdays far outweighs any harm to
Mhm.
her. Full stop.
Hmm.
And time after time, right? That's one of the law review articles we're writing is, looking at Baylor, LSU. Um, the who to protect was very clear, not the complainant.
Hmm.
All right. On that note, I gotta go meet with my students.
Well, thank you so much for these important
My pleasure.
insights,
Thank you.
and I hope it forces people to stop and to consider the implication of these things. I think people forget how widespread this is because some of these scandals are occasional, they break, they happen, and then, life moves on. And meanwhile, what you're telling me, the sheer numbers of people involved in them creates a perpetual,
Mm,
systematic, abusive environment. Um,
absolutely. I agree with you. It's a fight. Go team, go.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
My pleasure. Bye
But
bye.
bye. And for everyone's watching this, we'll be back next week, Tuesday night, the Washington Outsider Report on the Coalition Radio, 9 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.